stop begging to be liked. The hunger for approval is slavery in disguise. Every smile you chase, every nod you crave, chains you tighter to weakness. Power is never built on being liked. It is built on fear, respect, and silence. Silence makes men restless. It forces them to wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're capable of. Machiavelli said it best: "It is better to be feared than loved," when you cannot be both, and silence is the first step to being feared. Comment below. I rule through silence. Silence is not calm. It is not peace. It is war without sound. Most men expose themselves with words. They confess weakness, reveal plans, and beg for approval every time they open their mouths. They drown themselves in noise. That is why they are predictable. That is why they are prey. But the man who is silent, he is the wolf in the shadows. He does not explain. He does not defend. He does not justify. And because he does not, no one can measure him. No one can control him. His silence creates unease, and unease breeds fear. Understand this: silence is psychological torture. People hate it because it denies them certainty. They cannot read you. They cannot box you in. They start whispering, guessing, inventing stories to fill the void you created. Their imagination does your work for you. They destroy their own peace of mind while you stand still, untouched. That is domination without lifting a hand. This is the Machiavellian truth. To be liked is to be dependent on the moods of others. To be feared is to control them, regardless of their mood. Silence makes fear grow in the cracks where words once lived. And once fear takes root, respect follows. Never forget, when you speak less, every word becomes a weapon. It cuts deeper because it is rare. When you remain silent, your presence grows heavier than any speech. You stop being a participant in the crowd. You become the axis around which the crowd revolves. Weak men want to be understood. Strong men refuse to be read. The weak drown in noise. The powerful command with silence. That is the law of cold power. Comment below. Silence bends the weak. Silence is not just theory. It is a weapon you can use every day, a blade you carry into every room, every conversation, every negotiation. The weak use words to fill space. The powerful use silence to control it. In conversations, most people race to speak first. They reveal everything: opinions, emotions, weaknesses, just to avoid the discomfort of silence. That's when you win. Hold your tongue. Let the silence stretch. Watch them scramble to fill the void. Every extra word they spill is leverage for you. They reveal their position while you reveal nothing. That is strategy. That is war disguised as small talk. In conflict, silence is sharper than shouting. The man who argues loudly is trying to convince. The man who stays quiet is already certain. Do not defend yourself. Do not explain. The more silent you remain, the more they begin to doubt themselves. They replay the argument in their heads, questioning if you know something they don't. You turn their own mind into a prison, and they built it themselves. Respect follows fear. Not the shallow respect that comes from flattery, but the respect that comes from mystery. When people cannot predict you, they start treating you carefully. They weigh their words before speaking. They tread lightly around you, the same way a man approaches a dark cave, careful, cautious, unsure of what lurks inside. That is how a silent man commands attention without effort. Machiavelli knew this truth. It is not love that cements authority, but fear mixed with respect. Love fades. Affection changes with moods. But fear rooted in silence lingers, because people cannot fight what they cannot understand. Your silence becomes an aura, a shield around you that no one dares to pierce. And here lies the greatest advantage. Silence makes you feel inevitable. When you do not rush, when you do not explain, when you do not chase, people begin to believe you cannot be stopped. They sense something cold, steady, and unbreakable about you. You become the storm they cannot outrun, the shadow they cannot escape. the figure they cannot ignore. Every ruler, every commander, every man who has ever held true power has mastered this aura. They did not waste words trying to convince. They let silence work as their enforcer. And when they finally spoke, it was law. Understand this. To be feared without words is the ultimate form of power. To be respected without explanation is the ultimate form of strength. And to carry an aura that silences the noise of the world, that is how you rise above it. Comment below, "My silence is my crown." Your enemies do not need your sword to fall. They will fall on their own if you know how to remain silent. The loud man is easy to read. He reveals his plans in his rants, his weaknesses in his emotions, his desperation in his explanations. But the silent man gives nothing, and that nothingness is unbearable. The human mind abhors a void. When you leave silence, the imagination rushes in to fill it, and that is where the self-destruction begins. In negotiations, silence is your strongest move. Make your demand, then stop speaking. Do not fill the space. Do not explain your reasoning. Let them sweat. The silence becomes pressure. It forces them to make concessions just to break the tension. That is how kings win without lifting a sword. Even in relationships, silence is dominance. The one who cannot be silent is always the one who fears being left behind. When you withhold words, you show detachment. Detachment is power. It says, "I do not need you. You need me." That dynamic reshapes every connection, making you the center of gravity. This is not about being mute. It is about speaking less, speaking strategically, and letting silence do the work of intimidation. It is about refusing to be predictable, about forcing others to reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. Silence is not absence, it is pressure. It is presence amplified to the point where others feel it in their bones. Learn this and you become untouchable. Because while others waste energy, shouting, defending, and oversharing, you conserve your power. And when you finally choose to speak, your words land like hammers, impossible to ignore. Comment below, "I master silence." Fear and respect are not given. They are engineered, and silence is the foundation. The moment you stop chasing approval, people feel it. The energy shifts. They sense that you are not desperate to be liked, not desperate to be understood, not desperate to be included, and in that void, they feel something else, fear. Fear of losing your attention, fear of what you might be hiding, fear of what you might be capable of. Fear is power because fear makes people hesitate, fear makes them overthink, fear forces them to respect boundaries they would otherwise trample. And silence is the most subtle way to inject fear into their bloodstream. You do not threaten, you do not shout, you do not announce, you simply remain unreadable. That uncertainty corrodes their confidence like acid. Respect follows fear. Not the shallow respect that comes from flattery, but the respect that comes from mystery. When people cannot predict you, they start treating you carefully. They weigh their words before speaking. They tread lightly around you, the same way a man approaches a dark cave, careful, cautious, unsure of what lurks inside. That is how a silent man commands attention without effort. Machiavelli knew this truth. It is not love that cements authority, but fear mixed with respect. Love fades, affection changes with moods, but fear, rooted in silence, lingers because people cannot fight what they cannot understand. Your silence becomes an aura, a shield around you that no one dares to pierce. And here lies the greatest advantage. Silence makes you feel inevitable. When you do not rush, when you do not explain, when you do not chase, people begin to believe you cannot be stopped. They sense something cold, steady, and unbreakable about you. You become the storm they cannot outrun, the shadow they cannot escape, the figure they cannot ignore. Every ruler, every commander, every man who has ever held true power has mastered this aura. They did not waste words trying to convince. They let silence work as their enforcer, and when they finally spoke, it was law. Understand this. To be feared without words is the ultimate form of power. To be respected without explanation is the ultimate form of strength. And to carry an aura that silences the noise of the world, that is how you rise above it. Comment below. My silence is my crown. Your enemies do not need your sword to fall. They will fall on their own if you know how to remain silent. The loud man is easy to read. He reveals his plans in his rants, his weaknesses in his emotions, his desperation in his explanations, but the silent man gives nothing. And that nothingness is unbearable. The human mind abhors a void. When you leave silence, the imagination rushes in to fill it. And that is where the self-destruction begins. Your enemy starts asking, why isn't he speaking? What does he know? What is he planning? The silence becomes a riddle they cannot solve. And the longer they obsess, the deeper the paranoia digs into their mind. They begin inventing threats where none exist, seeing traps where there are none, hesitating at every move because they fear yours. This is psychological warfare at its purest form. When you say nothing, they start to fight shadows. They burn energy preparing for battles that don't exist. They attack phantoms while you watch in silence, conserving your strength. Their own paranoia consumes them, weakens them, destroys them from the inside out. And when they finally break, you strike once, clean and final. Machiavelli taught that a prince must appear powerful even when he is not. Silence is the perfect mask. Even if you are unsure, silence makes you seem certain. Even if you are weak, silence makes you seem dangerous, because people fear what they cannot measure. Enemies collapse not because you crushed them, but because they crushed themselves under the weight of their imagination. That is the beauty of silence. It makes them their own executioners. So when your enemy shouts, when he mocks, when he demands your response, stay silent. Each word you withhold is another crack in his armor. Each second you deny him your voice is another ounce of pressure building on his chest. And soon he will suffocate on his own fear. Silence is not absence. It is active power. It is the rope you hand your enemy, and they will hang themselves with it while you stand untouched. Comment below. My silence destroys my enemies. Powerful men do not waste their breath. Weak men do. The more a man speaks, the cheaper his words become. He explains, he pleads, he justifies, and in doing so, he reduces himself to noise. And noise is ignored. But silence changes everything. Silence makes you rare, and rarity is value. Think of gold. Its worth lies in its scarcity. Your words must be treated the same. Speak little, and every word becomes precious. Every sentence becomes weight. When you finally break silence, people lean in because they know what comes next will not be ordinary. It will be decisive. This is how leaders command. They do not drown rooms in endless explanations. They speak with finality. A silent man who chooses to speak transforms words into commands, not opinions, and the world respects commands. Machiavelli knew that appearances shape reality. A prince who talks too much loses the mystery of power. A prince who stays silent, who speaks rarely, cultivates the aura of inevitability. When he does speak, his words sound like law, even if they are merely suggestion. That is the difference between the powerless and the powerful. One speaks to be heard, the other speaks to be obeyed. Silence also creates contrast. Imagine two men. One talks endlessly, one waits in silence. When the silent one finally speaks, all ears shift to him. His words carry thunder because they arrive after restraint. Silence gives birth to gravity. This is the Stoic discipline at its highest form. The ability to control your tongue is the ability to control perception, and perception is reality. If people see you as restrained, detached, and unreadable, they will assign greater meaning to every fragment you reveal. They will overvalue you, not because you told them to, but because your silence forced them to. Remember this. The man who talks endlessly is replaceable. The man who speaks rarely is unforgettable. In a world drowning in voices, the one who withholds his own becomes the only one worth listening to. So guard your words, make them scarce, make them rare, make them strike like hammers, not drizzle like rain. Speak only when silence has already done its work, and when you do, make sure it sounds like the final judgment. Comment below. My words are commands. Every man who speaks too much arms his enemies. Every confession, every explanation, every unnecessary detail is a weapon placed into the hands of others. Words can be twisted, words can be used against you, words can betray you even when your intentions are pure. But silence cannot be used. Silence is a shield that blocks manipulation, betrayal, and exposure. The manipulator thrives on your need to respond. They bait you, provoke you, and wait for you to reveal yourself. But if you refuse to answer, their power crumbles. They cannot twist what you never said. They cannot exploit what you never gave. They are left shadowboxing against your silence, frustrated, defeated, powerless. The betrayer waits for you to speak too openly, to trust too easily, to reveal your vulnerabilities. They gather your words like daggers to stab you later. But if you are silent, you give them nothing. They have no weapon to turn against you. They must stab blindly, and blind attacks rarely land. The weak beg to be understood. The powerful do not explain. Explanation is not strength, it is surrender. It is bending to the judgment of others. Silence is refusal. Refusal to be judged. Refusal to be read. Refusal to be owned. That is why silence belongs to kings. Machiavelli warned rulers to guard their words as they would their throne. A careless statement can topple an empire. A single admission can weaken authority. The wise ruler uses silence as armor, never revealing more than necessary, never defending when attacked, never explaining when challenged. His silence makes him untouchable because no enemy can pierce what is never shown. Stoicism teaches control of the self. Silence is control made visible. It shows you are unshaken, unmoved, beyond provocation. And when others see you cannot be rattled, they hesitate to strike. That hesitation is your shield. So understand this. Silence is not emptiness. It is protection. It is the fortress no spy can infiltrate, no traitor can exploit, no manipulator can breach. The world will try to pull words from you. They will demand answers, explanations, reactions. Resist. For every word you withhold, you grow stronger. For every silence you keep, you build a wall higher than any castle. The shield of kings is not made of steel, it is made of silence, and those who master it are never defeated. Comment below, my silence is my shield. Power is not about chasing, it is about being chased. The man who chases approval, validation, or recognition becomes dependent, and dependence is weakness. The moment you show need, you give away leverage. Silence reverses this. Silence flips the frame. When you withhold your voice, your presence, your attention, you create scarcity. And scarcity breeds demand. People always want more of what is withheld. They crave what they cannot easily get. Your silence becomes gravity, pulling them toward you, forcing them to pursue what you refuse to hand out freely. In personal dynamics, this is brutal psychology. The one who talks more is always the one trying harder. The one who explains is always the one seeking understanding. The one who remains silent sits in the throne. Because silence sends a message. I do not need you to understand me. I do not need your validation. You need mine. That reversal breaks the balance of power. Suddenly, they are the ones proving themselves to you. In leadership, silence is authority. A leader who speaks sparingly forces his men to hang on every word. They wait for his approval, his guidance, his judgment. His silence makes them chase clarity, and because they chase it, they submit to him. Machiavelli understood this. A ruler must make himself desired, not common. Silence achieves this without effort. In negotiation, silence forces concessions. When you refuse to respond, they start sweetening the deal, offering more just to pull a word from you. Your silence makes them insecure, and insecurity makes them generous. This is power without lifting a hand. Even in relationships, silence is magnetic. If you are always available, always talking, always explaining, you are cheap. But if you are silent, detached, controlled, you become rare. And rarity creates obsession. They begin to wonder, why isn't he speaking? Why isn't he reacting? Why isn't he chasing me? That doubt becomes addiction, and addiction is control. This is not cruelty, it is strategy. Silence inverts the dynamic. It makes others lean forward while you lean back. It makes them give while you conserve. It makes them chase while you rule. Understand this. Silence is not passive. It is active dominance. It forces the world to bend to your frame, your rhythm, your control. And once you master it, you will never need to chase again, because everything will chase you. Comment below, they chase my silence. True intimidation is not built on threats. Threats reveal fear. True intimidation is built on restraint, on silence so heavy it crushes the air in the room. When you walk into a space and remain silent, people feel it. They sense your detachment, your control, your lack of need, and that lack of need unsettles them. Because most men are slaves to their own mouths, desperate to speak, desperate to fill the void. But when you refuse, when you hold your ground in silence, you create an aura. That aura whispers, I am not here to be liked. I am here to be obeyed. Enemies who once mocked you fall quiet. Rivals who once challenged you hesitate. Even allies tread carefully, weighing every word before speaking. Your silence forces them to police themselves, to edit their thoughts, to doubt their own ground. That is intimidation at its purest. When your presence alone forces others to bend before you speak. This is how kings ruled. They did not need to scream their dominance. They sat in silence, and the court whispered. Their silence made men bow before they were even commanded. Machiavelli understood this truth. Men fear uncertainty more than open threat. And silence is uncertainty incarnate. In conflict, silence makes you untouchable. If you argue, you stand on equal ground. If you shout, you show emotion. But if you remain silent, you rise above the fight. Your enemy grows louder, more desperate, more emotional, while you remain still, unreadable, unshaken. The crowd sees it. They know who truly holds the power. This is cold power psychology. Silence does not beg. It demands. It does not explain. It dictates. It does not need to prove. It makes others assume. And assumptions are far more terrifying than truth. Understand this. Silence is a throne. When you sit upon it, others cannot help but look up. When you wield it, you do not just command attention, you command fear. Because the man who cannot be read cannot be opposed. The man who cannot be predicted cannot be defeated. The man who is silent is always larger than life. This is not about arrogance. It is about strategy. Let others waste their breath. Let them bleed themselves dry with words. You will remain silent, and in that silence, they will see the shadow of their defeat. Comment below, my silence intimidates kings. Silence is not absence. Silence is sovereignty. It is the final stage of power, the point where you no longer compete, no longer chase, no longer explain. You simply exist above the noise. And in that stillness, the world bends. Understand this. Every man you admire, every ruler who carved his name into history, mastered silence. They spoke less than others. They revealed less than others. They moved in shadows until their strike was undeniable. Their silence was not weakness, it was command. The weak talk because they fear being forgotten. The strong stay silent because they know they will never be ignored. The crowd forgets noise, but silence haunts. Long after words fade, silence remains. It clings to the mind like smoke. It makes people whisper your name when you're not in the room. That is legacy. That is Machiavellian immortality. Your silence builds a fortress around you. Inside, you are untouchable. Outside, they guess, they fear, they invent stories about you. And in those stories, you become larger than life. The less you give them, the more they imagine. And what they imagine is always more powerful, more dangerous, more unstoppable than the truth. You do not just hold power, you become myth. This is the dark power of silence. It destroys enemies without a word. It forces respect without effort. It turns your words into law, your presence into authority, your aura into inevitability. And when combined with discipline, strategy, and cold focus, it makes you untouchable. From this day forward, never waste your voice on the unworthy. Never explain yourself to those beneath you. Never defend what does not need defense. Let the world talk. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. You remain silent, and in that silence, you rise. Remember, those who chase being liked will be forgotten. Those who command silence will be feared, respected, and remembered, forever. Now it is your move. Write your oath below. I rule in silence. Comment it, claim it, repeat it until it burns into your identity. And if you are ready to master the laws of power, subscribe now, like this video. Turn on notifications, because here we do not play games, we sharpen weapons, and silence is your first blade.